For the first time in a long time, I thought about Mama. I felt as if I understood why, at the end of her life, she had taken a fiance, why she had played at beginning again. Even there, in that home where lives were fading out, evening was a kind of wistful respite. So close to death, Mama must have felt free then and ready to live it all again. Nobody, nobody had the right to cry over her. And I felt ready to live it all again too, as if that blind rage had washed me clean, rid me of hope. For the first time, in that night alive with signs and stars, I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, so like a brother, really, felt that I had been happy and that I was happy again. For everything to be consummated, for me to feel less alone, I had only to wish that there be a large crowd of spectators the day of my execution, and that they greet me with cries of hate. Albert Camus, The Stranger. Vinland Saga is a historical manga and anime series written and illustrated by Makoto Yukimura. The story is set in the Viking Age and follows the life of Thorfinn, a young warrior seeking revenge against the man who killed his father. The story begins with Thor's, a legendary warrior known for his strength and combat prowess. Thor's, however, has left his violent Viking life behind and settled in a peaceful village with his family. This will foreshadow the character arc of the main protagonist. Thorfinn idolizes his father and dreams of becoming a great warrior like him. However, his peaceful life is disrupted when a group of mercenaries, led by a man named Askeladd, arrives in the village. Askeladd and his men attack Thor's, resulting ultimately in Thor's death. Thorfinn witnesses his father's demise and vows to avenge him by killing Askeladd. He becomes a member of Askeladd's crew, hoping to get close enough to exact his revenge. The story then follows Thorfinn as he is forced to confront the harsh realities of the Viking world, including the brutality of war, the pursuit of power, and the futility of revenge. Throughout his journey, Thorfinn matures as a warrior and a person, and he begins to question the path of revenge he has chosen. The series also delves into the concept of Vinland, a distant and mythical land which represents hope for a better life and a departure from the cycle of violence that defines the Viking Age. Undoubtedly, one of the most prominent themes in the series is the question of how to make sense of a senseless universe. Classically, one of the most prominent answers to this question comes in the form of religion, or should I say, the metaphysical claims of religion, namely, that despite the surface level appearance of chaos and violence, there is a loving and caring God who will ensure that everything works out for the best. There is, however, a problem with this approach, and this problem is highlighted by the series itself.
意図高き方、天にいます我らの父よ。ここに眠る村人たちの魂を、どうか身元にお召しください。この者たちを殺めし者たちの魂をお救いください。私どもの罪をお許しください。
ふん、他人のために祈ってる場合かよ、てめえら。
父よ、私の声はあなたの耳に届いているのでしょうか。我らの父よ、あなたはあなたの姿に似せて私たちをお作りになった。でもその力を分けてはくださらなかった。父よ、あなたが良き者も悪しき者も等しく愛されるというのなら、何のために無力な私たちを試されるのですか。父よ、私の声はあなたの耳に届いているのでしょうか。我らの父よ、私はあなたの愛を疑っています。
やめよ
If we accept that there is a God who, in some way, shape, or form, is looking out for us, then why do things seem to never work out? The Vinland Saga presents this in the form of war. Why would God allow for such senseless violence? Perhaps more importantly, Why doesn't God do anything about all of the senseless violence that people experience on a daily basis? Within philosophy, these questions can be loosely categorized as a general problem referred to as the problem of evil. In everyday language, this can be boiled down to the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And why does God allow these bad things to happen? The English philosopher David Hume, summarizing the Greek philosopher Epicurus, summarized the problem in this way: is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able, but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence comes evil? Now, we are examining a work of art here, so I want to focus less on what is called the logical problem of evil and more on what is often called the experiential or the existential problem of evil. Why doesn't God do anything about the evil in my life, the evils that I have experienced, or the evils which occur in the world in which I live? This question, I think, is embodied in the Vinland Saga, most notably in the character of Prince or King Canute. King Canute is initially introduced as a timid and gentle prince. He is a contrast to the violent and ruthless Viking culture depicted in the series, specifically characters like Thorfinn. In many ways, Canute is the foil to Thorfinn. In literature, a foil is a supporting character who has a contrasting personality and set of values to that of the main character. At the beginning of the series, Canute is portrayed as a sensitive and morally principled character, often struggling to reconcile his beliefs with the brutal world that he has been born into. Over the course of the series, Canute undergoes significant character development. He starts as a sheltered and insecure prince, but gradually grows into a more confident and assertive leader. His transformation is spurred by various experiences and relationships, particularly his relationship with Askeladd and Thorfinn. All of this, of course, stands in stark contrast to the character development of the main protagonist of the series, Thorfinn. Thorfinn starts off the series as a brash and violent kid and ends the series as essentially a pacifist. Basically, over the course of seasons 1 and 2, we will see a role reversal of both of these characters, in the sense that they will each take on the characteristics that the other character had in the first season. And this transformation is also depicted artistically in the physical appearance of the characters, switching from season 1 to season 2. As you can see in season 1, Prince Canute is depicted as mild, timid, physically unassuming. He has long hair in the series, long blonde hair. Whereas you have Thorfinn, who is at this point in the series a feral child. His father is killed in the first few episodes, and he spends the rest of the time just following Askeladd around, eating scraps of food and murdering whoever he comes across. He's a wild person, prone to violence to solve any issues or problems that he encounters. Quick to speak his mind and quick to want to get his way. And he really has no problem expressing his desires or wants, the exact opposite of Canute, who, when we are first introduced to him, only speaks to his servant, and when he speaks, he whispers. Contrast that to the characters in season 2. Thorfinn is essentially taken on aspects of Canute's appearance. You can see this with the long hair, but also with his mild and meek physical presence that he develops in season 2, contrasted with Canute's more assertive presence, his kingly presence that's on full display by season 2. He's taken authority and command of the army, he's taken authority and command of the kingdom, and he's more confident. And this is displayed both in his physical appearance, his body position and stature when he speaks to people, but also in his voice. He's actively giving commands to people instead of whispering to his servant like he was in the first season. Returning to Canute's character, he will undergo a radical transformation even within the context of the first season, character development that is central to the story and one of the central arcs that connects seasons 1 and 2. And part of this arc is Canute coming into his own as a leader and as a ruler. And part of that coming into his own is seeing how he is different and distinct, not only from his father, but different and distinct from the heavenly king that he believed in and worshiped as a Christian, Canute will start to separate himself as a leader not only from his father, but also essentially from God. And we see this come up at the end of the first season, and it'll also make an appearance at the end of the second season in the speeches that Canute gives.
Sane? Is anyone even sane in this damned world? We're all the same. We're all the same. Not a single person knows how to love in this world anymore. No one knows the meaning of life. No one knows the meaning of death. No one even knows the reason why they're fighting.
Your Highness.
I've had enough. I'm sick of it. What we lost in exchange for wisdom is the most important thing. It's the one thing that we'll never get back for as long as we live. We'll never attain it. And yet even then, you still tell us to seek it? Father in heaven? Miserable warrior, you are the farthest thing from love. You who have been expelled from paradise. Isn't there any way to end the suffering from your punishment other than death? Is what you say is that we only exist to be tested and tried? Oh, Father in heaven, this miserable warrior cannot be saved by your trials! Father in heaven, I no longer seek your salvation. If you will no longer give us salvation, then with our own hands, on this earth, we will create our own paradise.
Canute's character is defined by his internal moral struggles, the juxtaposition with the violence and brutality of the culture that he inhabits, as well as his own capacity for cruelty and ruthlessness. His journey is about finding a balance between his innate compassion that he has for the people that he rules over and his need to assert his authority as a ruler. It is at this intersection of compassion and authority where Canute experiences some rather extreme cognitive dissonance. If Canute as king is able to recognize the inherent suffering of the world and feels the strong desire to do whatever is in his power to alleviate that suffering, then why doesn't God do the same or feel the same way? This leaves Canute in a rather absurd position. He, as king, is left to do what God is unable to do. The absurdity, of course, stems from the assumption that God is able to alleviate suffering of his subjects, but for some mysterious reason chooses not to. Canute, on the other hand, is not able to alleviate the suffering of his subjects, but nevertheless, he still undertakes the task. Beginning of this video, I quoted from Albert Camus' novel, The Stranger. Camus, a French philosopher and writer, presented the concept of the absurd in his philosophical essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. He argued that human existence is inherently devoid of meaning and purpose, and that the search for ultimate meaning in an indifferent universe is futile. The absurd arises from the tension between our desire for meaning and the apparent meaninglessness of the world. Camus suggested that individuals should confront the absurd with a sense of defiance and live authentically by embracing life's uncertainties and creating their own meaning rather than seeking it in external sources such as religion or ideology. I want to read a brief section from Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus, in which he talks about the concept of the absurd hero. You have already grasped that Sisyphus is the absurd hero. He is, as much through his passions as through his torture, his scorn of the gods, his hatred of death, and his passion for life, won him that unspeakable penalty in which the whole being is exerted towards accomplishing nothing. This is the price that must be paid for the passions of this earth. Nothing is told about Sisyphus in the underworld. Myths are made for the imagination to breathe life into them. As for this myth, one sees merely the whole effort of a body straining to rise a huge stone and to roll it and push it up a slope 100 times over. One sees the face screwed up, the cheek tight against the stone, the shoulder bracing the clay-covered mass, the foot wedging it, the fresh start with arms outreached, the wholly human security of two earth-clotted hands.
A Viking chief. You're quite right. In fact, I am the Viking chief who stands above all chiefs. I am the sovereign king, the most powerful of all the Vikings on the North Sea. I am the ruler of the largest domain in Scandinavia. At my beck, 1,000 ships and 10,000 men. My power exceeds mortal understanding and makes the impossible possible. Behold, with my power I shall bend the waves themselves to my whim. By the will of the almighty King Canute, stirring seas, be calm! Both of you, did you see? Such is my power. Too meager to slow even the gentlest of waves. And do you know who it is that drives those waves? God above. To build a paradise here upon his earth is to stand in defiance of the laws of his creation. A rebellion against God. For as long as he rules over mankind, we shall never find happiness.
Rebellion?
Look at us, Thorfinn. Look at my band of Vikings. All of us purveyors of chaos and destruction. Raiders feared and reviled. Do you believe that we have any right to live in paradise? And yet, this is what humans are. Wretched sinners, doomed to wander lost through the cruel world to which we were cast. So if I'm to build a paradise on Earth free of suffering, I must save these men whom God abandoned.
You want to save the Vikings?
And I will. I alone am able to conquer them, rule them, unify their strength, and channel it to create a paradise. There is no one more suited to this task. I need power. With the gathered power of all mankind, I will wage war upon God.
The absurdity of Canute's position is perfectly displayed in this scene. He begins by outlining the scope of his power, explaining all of the military might at his disposal. Yet Canute is not arrogant or narcissistic, and the absurdity of his position is not lost on himself. He is aware that he is an absurd hero, as is demonstrated in his commanding of the waves. He knows that his power is fleeting, that his bid for political power is ephemeral. An integral character arc in season 2 is his realization of his father's words about the crown's curse. Did you see, says Canute, such as my power too meager to slow even the gentlest of waves? His commanding of the waves is a testament and recognition that despite being a powerful king, His own power is inherently limited. He lacks the power that God has. Nevertheless, the heroism of Canute comes in his effort to achieve what God cannot. To quote Canute again, to build a paradise here on earth is to stand in defiance of the laws of his creation. For as long as he rules over mankind, we shall never find happiness. Canute takes it as his responsibility, as his purpose to save the people that he says God has abandoned. Humanity, in his view, is doomed to live in a violent and cruel world, a life that they did not choose. God, in turn, denies those people peace or happiness because of their sinful state. This is Canute's boulder, his Sisyphean task, to create security, peace, and to offer happiness to those people whom God deems unworthy, the Vikings. Like Syphilis, Canute knows the futility of the practice. He knows that he will fail, that he won't be able to save everyone, that the soldiers under his command will commit horrible acts, but he will still try. I think this is why at the end of the series, Thorfinn acknowledges Canute. Although they are ideological opposites, they ultimately have the same goal. By the end of season 2, Thorfinn has renounced violence and proclaimed that he, quote, has no enemies. To escape the cycle of war and death, his solution is essentially to leave the land of the Vikings in search of Vinland, a land out of reach of kings or war. Canute, on the other hand, seeks to find his own solution in the world to establish his paradise here amongst the people. The courage of Canute is the courage that Camus encourages us all to find within ourselves, the ability to persist and to create meaning in a universe that is indifferent to our existence and in a universe that itself lacks meaning.